Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Z. I'm a clinical psychologist specializing in transgender care. Welcome to my channel. If you have not yet subscribed, make sure you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. That way, not only you will be supporting me, but you're also helping everybody else find this valuable and free content. And if you don't yet follow me on Instagram, link is below. Make sure you also follow me on Instagram. That's where I show up for all of you, offering tips, support, and guidance. And I would be very grateful if you support me back. Today, for this video, I'm going to share with you 3 signs when coping is no longer working with gender dysphoria. Now, coping, as we all know, when it comes to gender dysphoria, is very essential to so many of you. Because I know for a fact that a lot of you watching this are either one, in a position where you can't do anything about gender dysphoria, perhaps due to circumstances, due to the unsafe environment that you find yourself in, or perhaps you don't have financial resources in order to do anything about gender dysphoria. I also know that for the rest of you, or at least for some of you, you're not in position to do something about gender dysphoria for other personal reasons. And those personal reasons could range from perhaps you feel like it's not worth it for you at this point in your life. Maybe you feel like you really don't want to rock the boat, so to speak, people often say, because you have family, you have kids, you have a big fear you might lose all of that if you do address gender dysphoria. So I know that there is a tremendous amount of people who live every single day with gender dysphoria, and as a result, try to find a way to cope with it. As you know, gender transition, as I always say, is not for everybody, nor is it the only viable coping or treatment for gender dysphoria. And coping for some people can last throughout their lifetime. It really depends on your type of coping. The trick when it comes to coping is, it's really not just knowing, having no idea at all whether it is going to last. Meaning, for a lot of individuals, dysphoria may be manageable, but one day it might exponentially increase. So, in other words, nobody really has a crystal ball to be able to tell you if you'll be able to live with dysphoria long term. This is why it becomes very tricky when people try to figure out if they can live with dysphoria and manage it throughout their lifetime. I know for a fact one thing: gender dysphoria doesn't go away. If people truly have gender dysphoria, it doesn't just one day disappear. If it disappears, the root cause was not gender identity, the root cause was something else. So coping, as you know, is going to fall into 2 categories. One is we have healthy coping, and one is we have unhealthy coping. And it's pretty easy to tell the difference between healthy versus unhealthy coping, right? Healthy coping is a coping you utilize to help you alleviate the distress of gender dysphoria. And the way you alleviate the distress is by using coping that also has additional benefits. So benefit 1 would be alleviating dysphoria, and then it will also have another additional icing on the cake. For example, if you are using exercise as a way to cope, not only exercise is going to help alleviate dysphoria, because for the period of time that you're exercising, you might not find yourself thinking about dysphoria. Your head goes somewhere else. You're also grounding yourself in your body. But exercising also benefits your well-being, your emotional state, and your physical health. So this is a good sign of a healthy coping. Unhealthy coping, on the other hand, may for a short time help alleviate dysphoria, but has negative consequences on your well-being. Drinking is a great example. You may come home after work and drink several glasses of wine or several bottles of beer or whatever your preference of choice is, to find yourself maybe temporarily get intoxicated, and for that particular evening, stop thinking about dysphoria, only to wake up feeling worse, having hangover, and just over long term, drinking will accumulate to have negative effects on your health. This is just not, it's a fact. So, first and foremost, before I go into recognizing 3 signs of coping, is ideally if you are in a position where you're trying to cope with dysphoria as long as you can, see what your coping is. Try to lean more on a side of as healthy coping as you possibly can versus the one that has other negative, drastic effects on your life. So now that I have covered all of that, let me share with you 3 signs that you can watch out for when coping is no longer working. And one of the reasons why you want to watch out for the signs is because if you don't pay attention and you're using coping, but it's no longer working, then you're risking this. You're risking gender dysphoria accumulating and building up to a pressure cooker. And you're risking one day for that pressure cooker's lid to just go off, for that pressure cooker to just explode. When it explodes, and for some of you watching this, you may have already experienced this, when it explodes, there's a lot of damage control to do. When it explodes, you may find yourself suddenly completely depressed. You may find yourself really debilitated. You may find yourself just incapable to move forward. You may have a nervous breakdown. You may need to take a whole month off work. In other words, when things we tend to build up inside of ourselves, and for all of you, it's going to be gender dysphoria. Coping is aimed at creating one of those release valves. So if dysphoria and how you feel about dysphoria, or how dysphoria creates a lot of pain and suffering inside of you, is creating this pressure valve. Anytime you use coping, what you're really doing is you're not treating dysphoria. It's still the pressure valve is still there, but you are releasing that fuse, right? So you're letting some of that steam out. And by letting some of that steam out, it becomes more bearable, more manageable to go day to day, to survive day to day. If you don't do any coping at all, eventually, like I said, it's going to explode. So this is why for those of you who are using coping as a way to release some of the pressure, some of that build up that accumulates as a byproduct of dysphoria, is to pay attention when coping no longer works. Because if it no longer works and you're not even aware of it and you're not paying attention of it, it will combust on you. And when it does combust and when it explodes on you, well, then it can be really detrimental. I know that a lot of people actually unconsciously self-sabotage themselves by not paying attention to coping, because sometimes some people, there's a lot of us out there who are unwilling to do something about dysphoria until the shoe actually drops, and then we feel forced to do something about it. It's one of those things where I'm not going to do it, but if it so happens that it explodes and everybody knows, then guess what? I'm up against the wall and now I got to do something about it. There's some personality types out there who do unconsciously operate that way. That's just the way it is. But for a lot of people, they work very, very hard not to let that pressure cooker explode. And this is why noticing and spotting when coping is no longer coping is instrumental. Again, I want to be very clear, coping will not just take care of dysphoria. It will not treat dysphoria. Don't fool yourself that by coping, even by healthy coping, you're in any way getting rid of it. You're just basically enabling yourself to live with it for a longer period of time without enduring unnecessary extra suffering. That's what coping is. So now let's focus on 3 signs that will tell you, signposts, tips that coping is no longer working. The first one is pretty easy, straightforward one. That's when whatever you used for coping, say you come home after work and you know that when you come home from work, because you're now no longer occupying your mind by thinking about work, you come home from work and you're relaxing. And in the past, your coping with dysphoria was to put on comfortable clothes and sit on a couch and maybe like watch something that gives you enjoyment. Maybe you like to watch, I don't know, I love to watch John Oliver when I'm stressed in the evening. That releases my personal work stress. Or Jon Stewart, That's like my go-to. So wherever you go to, you watch it and your mind goes off and you don't have to think about dysphoria. So you come home, you get in comfortable clothes, you sit down on a couch, you turn on your favorite TV show or whatever it is, and you find yourself now thinking about how dysphoric you feel. So in other words, if in the past it allowed you to get distracted, to not think about dysphoria, now it's no longer doing that. So that's the first very easy sign, is that whatever it is you're using for coping is now no longer taking care of dysphoria. Now, when in the past it helped you either make your mind forget about it temporarily, or it alleviated how painful it is, now it's still very present and in the forefront of your mind. So this is the very first easy sign, right? You're doing something used to work, now it's no longer work. Another sign is a little bit of a trickier sign. Another sign is you're using coping that used to work for you in the past, but now you notice this. Instead of helping you decrease dysphoria, it actually increases dysphoria. That's right. Let me say that again. Instead of helping you decrease dysphoria, now the same coping is increasing your distress. Why? Yes, there is a very good psychological reason behind it. So here's why. I'm going to make an analogy: drinking. People come home after work and they start drinking to forget about dysphoria. They associate the drink with, I'm going to come home, the drink represents, I'm going to go into relaxed state. It's going to intoxicate me. It's going to numb my feelings, and I won't have to think about dysphoria. Other intoxicating substances, by the way, work the same way, including pot. So you do that, and it works. It helps you not to think about dysphoria, or it numbs your feelings and you don't have to feel the pain so much. But the more you do that, the more you engage with it. Now your mind is also starting to associate that, oh, I need to drink because I have dysphoria. And now when you drink, all you think about is, oh, I'm doing this because especially I have a dysphoria. And now all I can think about is dysphoria. As a result, it will increase feelings of dysphoria. So in other words, now you are more even conscientious of why you're using coping, and you now have even more of an awareness that the reason why you're using this coping is because you have dysphoria. Now you're even thinking more about dysphoria, and so your dysphoria starts to increase. This is the second sign that coping, whatever you're doing, no longer working. It's starting to now increase your gender dysphoria. I know it's very, sometimes we want things to work long term, but the reality is all of the coping, every single one of them, is only meant short term. Coping is never, ever, ever meant long term. I want you all to just remember this, write it down somewhere, because people really think that it's not long term. And the way to do long term, if people doing it long term, and if somebody says I've been doing it for decades, they've been switching back and forth between different methods of coping. And as a result, once you get really conditioned to one, then you switch to another one. It's just like anything else, right? We get habituated, and then when we get habituated, it's no longer working. So you introduce a new way of coping, then you go back to the old way of coping, and you dance around. But it's not a long-term solution, because again, it doesn't treat dysphoria. Dysphoria doesn't go away. So this is how you know reason number 2. The third sign that you know that coping is no longer working is when you're accustomed to use whatever it is you're doing to cope with dysphoria, but now you catch yourself that you need more of it, right? Same example with drinking. You notice that you needed only 1 glass of wine to numb your feelings. Now you need 2, now you need 3, and now you need a whole bottle. When you start noticing that your coping is increasing, That's a really big red flag that your dysphoric feelings are coming to the surface. That's a big red flag that you're letting out the steam, right? But the amount of the amount of I'm so bad with this analogy, but what I'm trying to say is that the amount of opening you have for the pressure release is so small relative to how much pressure you have built up. There you go. You see what I mean? And for that reason, you need more. You need more of that. You need to open it up even bigger, even bigger. What you need to ask yourself is not why it's no longer working, but what you need to ask yourself is what is starting to cause this pressure to build up exponentially so quickly that now I need a bigger opening. So something is going on. This is a very red flag telling you that something is going on in your life. Either you're becoming more self-aware, either you are a lot of suppressed feelings are coming to the surface. Other something else is in your environment. Something is triggering you. Something is coming into your sphere of experience that is starting to build up that pressure even more so. And that's a very, very, very big telling sign, not only that the coping is not working, but that you may potentially be ready to burst at any point. Out of all three coping signs, this is the one you really want to pay attention to. If you're finding yourself needing more of that coping, if you're using exercise for coping, which is a healthy, fantastic coping, and you used to come home from work and you used to go for a 15-minute run or 30-minute run, and it did wonders for you. It helped you. It grounded you. Sure, you came after run. Dysphoria was still there, but you felt so much better. But now you notice yourself, you need to run for a couple of hours after work. That's a sign something internally is building up that now you need that much coping. Please, please pay attention to that. If that is happening to you, what is going on? Because chances are you are on that fine line of completely exploding. And unless your strategy, your goal is to explode, remember how I said, some people, some personalities, this is not good or bad. We're all so, so different. We all self-sabotage ourselves so differently, myself included. You'd be surprised what kind of psychological tactics we tend to employ as human beings just to get through things. And one of them is, I'm not going to make a choice. I'm not going to make a decision. I'm not going to take actionable step until the shoe drops, my back is against wall, and now I have no choice but to do something about it. And if that's your personality type, well, guess what? Then whatever it is you're hoping for is coming your way. And I guess ideally, maybe for you, then that might be a positive thing. Again, it all depends on personality type. But these are the three most common ways to know that coping is no longer works. And if coping is your priority long term, remember, long term in here is kind of like an oxymoron because there's no such thing. It's all short-term solution. You just basically prolonging things for yourself. These are the three ways that you can spot it. Comment below, let me know what do you use for coping, which one of the categories you experience. Have you experienced the third one where the pressure cooker builds up and what happened then? Let me know, and I will see you all next time. Goodbye.